Hello, and thank you for joining our teaching for the 21st century webinar brought to you by the David Horowitz Freedom Center and the Glazov Gang. I am your host, Annie Cyrus. If you're joining us on Zoom, please use the Q&A box on your screen if you have any questions. Or if you're on Facebook with us, go ahead and use the comment section with your questions, and I promise we will get to answer all of them as soon as our very special guest presentation is over. With that being said, it is my distinct honor to introduce our speaker this evening. He is Itamar Marcus. He is the founder and director of Palestinian Media Watch, one of the foremost authorities on Palestinian policy and ideology. Mr. Marcus has been instrumental in exposing the PA's duplicity, hate, and terror promotion. He has presented PMW's findings to members of government and parliaments of over 30 countries. Hello, Itamar. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. A pleasure to be with you.
It is absolutely my honor. And as we discussed yesterday, I am extremely excited to hear your thoughts on this topic. So floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I will open by sharing my screen. Okay, thank you very much. And this evening's conversation, this evening's discussion is going to be the world of the Palestinian child. Why is that important? The Palestinian Authority has many messages. It has messages to the world. It has messages to its own children. There are very often contradictions between these messages. We believe that the messages that the Palestinian Authority gives to its own children are the real messages, to its own people are the real messages, not what it tells the world. In addition, what they tell their children will determine if we have peace in the next generation. And that's why knowing the world of the Palestinian child is the key to understanding if we're going to have peace in the next generation, and is the key to really knowing what the Palestinian Authority really is looking for with Israel. Now, at Palestinian Media Watch, we look at everything that happens in the Palestinian world. We look at their sports pages, their school books, their culture, their crossword puzzles. We really look at them holistically from all the open and official sources. We study the Facebook pages and the Twitter accounts of the leadership so that we can get a very, very good sense of what the messages are, because we're looking at all the different avenues that the PA is using to give their people these messages. And we have found there are two different worlds, as I mentioned. There's the English language world, which they want the world to hear, and there's the Arabic language world. And today I'm going to be giving you a little window into that Arabic language world. Now, I'm going to open with something that happened a little over 2 months ago. This is a picture and an article about a stabbing. 17-year-old Palestinian boy on the way home from school decided that he would stab some Israelis. Now, he took this knife that you see over here in his school bag with him. He took it on the way to school, and on the way home, he stabbed 2 Israelis, and the knife was stuck in the back of the second Israeli, at which point someone shot and killed the 17-year-old boy. And this is the way it was reported in the Palestinian newspaper, the official PA Daily. 17-year-old youth was shot and died as a martyr. Local sources said that the martyr is an outstanding high school student in the science track. Why would an outstanding student take a knife to school, go where there are Israelis, some of them with guns, knowing that there's a good possibility that he would be shot and killed? Why would a Palestinian teenager do such a thing? And this is what I want to get at today. What turns Palestinian children into terrorists? What turns Palestinian society as a whole into supporters of terrorists? And basically, what turns good people into terrorists? What is it about the Palestinian messages that there are people that even good people believe that being a terrorist is the right thing to do? Every society has fringe, small percentage on the fringe who are criminals or support things like terror. But within the Palestinian society, we have overwhelming support for terrorists. And the question is, how did the Palestinian Authority turn its society so that even good people are supporting terror? Now, I'm going to open up with some examples from the sports pages and to show you how even something as innocent as sports can influence the way Palestinians see terror and terrorists. There's an article here about a sports tournament run by the Palestinian Authority Ministry of Education. It was called the Dalal Mughrabi Sports Festival. Now, the girls participated for a few days in this sports festival, and you can see here on the picture that they all had wore these T-shirts with the picture of this Dalal Mughrabi, this same Dalal Mughrabi. Who was this person who's being honored by having this sports festival in her name? Dalal Mughrabi hijacked this bus in 1978. 37 Israelis were killed, including these 12 children. It was the worst terrorist attack in Israel's history. So because she led the worst terror attack in Israel's history, she has sporting festivals named after her, many sporting events. She also has 5 Palestinian Authority schools named after her. In addition, there are another 31 Palestinian Authority schools named after other terrorists. What is going on here? Schools and things named after terrorists, sporting events named after terrorists. Look in the school books themselves. Look what they talk about Dalal Mughrabi, this mass murderer. There's a chapter on heroes. Heroes have an important position in every nation. We're proud of them, sing their praise, learn their history and lives, name our children after them. Every one of us wishes to be like them. And then the school book continues, who among us has forgotten Dalal Mughrabi? There's a list of 10 people, all of them fighters, and who has forgotten? Everyone wants to be like them. That's the message. Everyone wishes to be like them. They're telling Palestinian children, this is for 5th graders, talking about 11-year-olds, that you want to be like Dalal Mughrabi. This chapter ends, bravo to the heroes and scorn to the cowards. So 11-year-olds are being told that if you don't want to go out and murder 37 Israelis and yourself be killed, because Dalal Mughrabi was killed in a terror attack, if you don't want to do that, then you're a coward. If you want to do that, bravo, you're a hero, but you're a coward and scorn to you. That's the message coming from the Palestinian Authority to its people. I'll show you, it's not just in the school books. The schools themselves are places that honor terrorists. And here's just one example like this. This is the entrance to a school in Bethlehem. And you see the young girls here, teenagers, and it's got this plaque over here. What is this plaque? This plaque is to commemorate the martyrs of the Al-Aqsa Intifada. And the one name that's specified is the martyr, or one of the 2 names, the martyr Ayat al-Akhras. Who was she? 17-year-old girl suicide bomber. So every time the 17-year-old girls and the 15 and 16-year-old girls walk into school, they're seeing the name of a 17-year-old suicide bomber being honored as they entered school. Again, powerful, powerful role modeling. So the first thing we're seeing, if we're going to go discuss the question, is how do you turn children into terrorists? What we see is that in Palestinian society, social status, role modeling is a very powerful voice. Everywhere a Palestinian child is going to turn, they're going to see another terrorist honored. Children want to be honored. They want to be admired. They want their people to look up to them. So what's the fastest track to being honored in Palestinian society? It's be a terrorist. Try to attack an Israeli. Why did that 17-year-old do it on the way home from school? Maybe he wanted to be a hero. Maybe his friends didn't admire him enough, didn't like him enough. So this is what we're learning, first of all. Role modeling to create social status, and creating social status, this is very powerful in the Palestinian Authority. Now, there are many other messages the PA gives to their people, and I want to get into some of the fundamental ideology of the PA, and then we'll get a better picture of, like I said, how they turn even good people into terrorists. Now, one of the most important messages, which is hidden from the world, is that Jews are the source of evil in the world. The Palestinian Authority is a very, very anti-Semitic society. Polls found them to be, in fact, the most anti-Semitic society in the world. And what we at Palestinian Media Watch have learned, it doesn't happen by accident. There's intense demonization of Jews in the Palestinian Authority. I'm going to start with a little video here of probably the most important religious figure in the PA. His name is, the speaker is Mahmoud al-Abash. He's Mahmoud Abbas's advisor on Islam. And I want you to show you how he defines the conflict with Israel. What's it about? Is it about territory? If it's about territory, then we can discuss it and compromise. But maybe it's about something else. Look at what this most important religious figure, Abbas's personal advisor on Islam, look what he tells people on Palestinian TV.
هذا الصراع المحتدم ها هنا في فلسطين أيننا وبين هذا الاحتلال المجرم صورة أخرى من صور الصراع التاريخي بين الحق والباطل، بين الخير والشر. على مدى التاريخ كان هناك صراع بين الخير والشر. الخير يمثله الأنبياء وأتباع الأنبياء، والشر يمثله الأبالسة وأتباع الأبالسة، الشياطين وأتباع الشياطين. ونحن ها هنا لسنا بدعا من الأمر، هو صراع بين حقيقتين، حقيقة الخير وحقيقة الشر، بين مشروعين، مشروع الرحمن ومشروع الشيطان.
This is such an important message. The conflict didn't start in 1967 with what they call the territories, what they call the occupied territory. It didn't even start in 1948 with the creation of Israel. The conflict started really at the beginning of Islam, when the Jewish people, who represented evil and Satan and the devil in the world, they were in conflict with Muslims. They were in conflict with Islam. And because Israel is a Jewish state, Israel is Satan's project. This is the message. Palestinians are Allah's project, and the Jews, or Israel, the Jewish state, is Satan's project. So this is so important because there is nothing we can do about this. There is no compromise we can do on territory. There is no compromise. There's no land that we can give them if we are Satan's project. Now, look what they do now, how they pass this message on to Palestinian children. This is a cartoon, part of a series that ran twice during the Ramadan. It's all about the early days of Islam. Satan is trying to destroy Muhammad. So who does Satan use as his partner? Satan can't bring evil to the world by himself. Satan needs partners. So look, children are being taught, and the Palestinian Authority ran this video, this whole series twice during the Ramadan, being taught that Jews are in cahoots with Satan, partners with Satan to try to destroy Muhammad.
لقد هزمنا يا لعين أمام جندي من جنود الله له الرعب. هو من هزم اليهود وأخرجهم من ديارهم في خزي الرعب. لقد بنيت خططي على نار الحقد والكراهية التي تملأ قلوب اليهود.
Okay, so here you have children watching this ugly and scary and fearful, really scary Satan, and he wants to destroy Muhammad. And what's his plan? He tells the children, he tells them, my plan is to work with the Jews because the Jews have their hearts filled with hatred for Muhammad. Now we know how important Muhammad is as an image in Muslim societies. It's a capital crime even to draw a picture of Muhammad. And here the Jews wanted to work with Satan. That's what they're being told in this program in order to destroy Muhammad. Now, I'll give you another example of this intense Jew hatred and what happens to it. This is a person who had a regular program on Palestinian television. And one of his messages was a weekly program on Islam. And let me just show you one of his messages on TV.
حتى قال لي أحد كبار السن لو أن سمكة تقاتلت مع سمكة في البحر لأيقنت.
Okay, humanity, he says, will never live in comfort as long as Jews are causing devastating corruption around the world. Why? Because Jews are responsible for every evil in the world. Even if a fish in the sea fights another fish, the Jews are behind it. That's this message. Now, does this get him off TV? No, not only doesn't it get him off TV, he constantly had anti-Semitic messages. And then after a few years on TV, this is what happens to him. He meets with Mahmoud Abbas, and then he's appointed to be dean of an entire school system, the Al-Azhar school system in Gaza. So Mahmoud Abbas is appointing him. So you can be the most anti-Semitic, filled with Jew hatred. Every problem in the world, even under the sea, comes from the Jews, and you can get yourself appointed to be head of a school system in the Palestinian Authority. Now, this is very important. This is a little section of a documentary I'm going to show you that Fatah produced, describing what the Jews experienced in Europe and why there was anti-Semitism. This is what Fatah, this is of course the main political party, the party of Mahmoud Abbas, this is what they put on their Facebook page. This was a documentary produced by their educational and information division of Fatah.
هناك في أوروبا يقيم القوم مخيماتهم وأماكن سكناهم. جيتوهات ضيقة تبنى أعمدتها على الانفكاك عن البشر مرورا واشمئزازا من أغيار لا يرتقون إلى مكانتهم. من أناس هم أفاعل أبناء أفاعل حسب رؤيتهم. هناك تحاكي كل مؤامرات الاستغلال المادي والبشري للغير، ويكره سكان الأرض جيتوهات القوم ومخازن تصدير الحقد والاستغلال ليتحولوا إلى مكون معادى لعنصريتهم وقذارة أعمالهم.
Okay. Jews were hated because of their racism and their filthy behavior. This documentary literally turned actual history on its head. Why were the Jews in ghettos? The Jews were in ghettos because the non-Jewish world forced them into ghettos. And here it's turned on its head. The Jews wanted to be in ghettos because in the ghettos, they could plan all these terrible things for the non-Jewish world. Other quotes within this documentary are: the Jewish tribe led the project to enslave humanity. The Jews allied with the Nazis to burn Jews, to accumulate wealth. Jews say only we are people, all the others are animals. This is outrageous libels coming from it. This was it was a short documentary, about 10 minutes, and it was filled with all of this hatred and lies, continuous hatred and lies about Jews. The fundamental message is Jews were hated because of their racism and filthy behavior. Jews are hated because we deserve it. That's the message coming from Fatah to its people. And of course, they're in conflict with Israel, with the Jews. And if you hate the Jews, they're telling the Palestinian population you're hating them because of their racism, their filthy behavior. The Jews deserve to be hated internationally. A television on Palestinian television program earlier this year on PATV just repeated this message. And what did they say? The Holocaust was the Jews' payment for their wickedness. Again, blaming anti-Semitism, blaming the suffering that the Jews experienced on the Jewish behavior themselves. So this is the first message from the PA to its people, which is so fundamental. The Jews are the world's problem. You heard it, the world will never live in peace and tranquility as long as there are Jews. That's the first message. Now, this applies to the Palestinians very specifically because the Jews live around, Israel is a Jewish state, and Israel is living around Palestinians, and Israel therefore endangers Palestinians. And I want to show you how this plays out. Now, you remember I started with this about the 17-year-old boy. I didn't read the whole article in the PA Daily. I wanted you to read, I'm going to read it to you now. A 17-year-old youth was shot by the occupation forces and died as a martyr after a stabbing operation by extremist Israelis. Here again, history is turned upside down, literally within hours of the time it's happening. This boy, this 17-year-old, came as a terrorist and stabbed an Israeli. And here they turn it around. He was killed after a stabbing operation by extremist Israelis. Palestinian television went even further, and they explained it as follows. Today, the occupation police killed a young man at the beginning of his life on the pretext of carrying out a stabbing attack, which is the pretext it uses every time. This is the message from the PA to its people. In fact, there was a cartoon in the official daily once that showed a lot of Palestinians lined up on the ground, and they showed an Israeli soldier coming along with knives and placing them next to the Palestinians, saying here they were all terrorists. This is literally what they tell their people, that Israel takes knives, Israel wants to kill Palestinians, we kill them, and then we put knives next to the dead bodies in order to accuse them of being terrorists. This is the Palestinian Authority messages to its people. The Jews or Israel is trying to get us. This is on a children's program for young children, 4, 5, 6-year-olds. Listen to what she tells the children.
وبعض الأصدقاء للأسف وهذا الإشي كتير مؤسف اللي بدي أحكي لكم إياه بيفقدوا حقهم بالحياة لأنه الاحتلال بيتعمد. Okay, a number of our friends, meaning a number of young children, have lost their lives, she's claiming, because Israel, who she calls the occupation, is deliberately killing Palestinian children. This is on a children's program. So children are growing up with this message. They see it with the Satan as the evil force. They see it on the children's programs. Israel is trying to kill Palestinian children. Look at this, which was just a couple of months ago. They wanted to teach Palestinians not to buy Israeli products, to boycott Israeli products. So they put a Star of David with blood dripping from it and the picture of this little infant over here, an injured infant. And here is the barcode, supposedly an Israeli barcode connected to all this blood. Again, Israelis are trying to kill Palestinians. This is the message that comes across. Now, of course, Hitler and Nazism is the worst force in the world. I want to show you how often the Palestinian Authority accuses Israel of being like the Nazis. There's this collection I'm going to show you
is just from 4 months, January to April of 2021, of how many times official PA sources called Israel Nazis. Here you've got Adolf Netanyahu. Israel is a state most similar to Nazi Germany. It's more cruel and despicable than what the Nazis did to the Jews. Detention camps are most similar to Nazi crematoria. What is happening in Palestine is a second Holocaust, and it goes on and on, more and more examples. All of this coming from official sources. So the second message is from the Palestinian Authority to its people that you Palestinians are in danger of Israelis. They are trying to kill you. They're like Nazis. They're doing to us what was done to them. This is a constant message in the Palestinian Authority. Now, third message, Israel threatens Islamic holy sites. Now, this is a critical message because especially when they focus on the Al-Aqsa Mosque, because all of the major terror waves that Israel has suffered from the Palestinian Authority since the Oslo Accords have been because of this libel that Israel is trying to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Israel is trying to defile the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The Intifada, what they call the terror war that lasted from 2000 to 2005. Israel lost 1,200 people to Palestinian terror, mostly suicide terror. They called it the Al-Aqsa Intifada. It was in defense of Al-Aqsa. In 2014, in 2015, terror waves started in defense of Al-Aqsa. And the last war we just had now in May was supposedly in defense of Al-Aqsa. Now, I want to show you, the Palestinian Authority knows how sensitive Palestinians are about Al-Aqsa, and this is what they teach the people. This is just July of this year. There's an attack. This is the Mufti of the Palestinian Authority, the highest religious figure. Quote, there's an attack against the existence of Al-Aqsa. There are calls to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque and establish the alleged temple in its place. Israel wants to destroy the mosque and build a temple. By the way, they call it the alleged temple because they deny to their people that there ever was a temple in Jerusalem. The point is, though, in terms of the threat to Israel, they're accusing us of trying to destroy the mosque. Now, I want to show you how young it is and how early in their lives Palestinians are learning this message. This is a cartoon from a Palestinian school book of grade 7. And this is, of course, the picture is very clear. It's an Israeli tractor digging under the Dome of the Rock, which they call part of the Al-Aqsa Mosque area. And this is what the children are told to do. Think about the following cartoon and write a paragraph about the message that the illustrator wanted to convey. So every Palestinian child going through school is going to get to 7th grade. He's going to see this image and he has to write down, Israelis are trying to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque. So they're getting the message to Palestinian children at a very, very young age. So the third message then is that their holy sites are being, not only are they personally under attack, but their holy sites are under attack from Israel. Now, the final message that completes the demonization of Israel is that Palestinians are victims of Israeli occupation, but not an occupation of 1967, Judea, Samaria, West Bank, that they claim. They're victims of Israel's existence. And I want to show you this again, in their own words. This is a program, again, for children earlier this year. And look at what they tell them is Palestine, and look at what they tell them is under occupation since 1948.
السهل الساحلي الفلسطيني هو وجه فلسطين نحو البحر المتوسط والعالم العربي ونقطة احتكاك حضاري بين الشرق والغرب ويمثل بوابة فلسطين للعالم. يمتد الساحل الفلسطيني من جبل الكرمل شمالا إلى رفح على الحدود المصرية جنوبا ويقع بين المرتفعات الجبلية الفلسطينية شرقا والبحر الأبيض المتوسط غربا. فيه العديد من الموانئ مثل ميناء حيفا وعكا ويافا وأسدود وعسقلان وغزة، وقد توافدت عليه مختلفة عبر العصور طمعا للاستفادة من موقعه وما زال الساحل الفلسطيني تحت.
Okay. Every bit of Israel is Palestine, and every bit of Israel is an occupation since 1948. This is the Palestinian message to their people. When they come to Washington, when they come to European capitals, the message is we're complaining or we're upset with Israel's ruling in or what's going on in West Bank. but to their own people, that's not the problem. To their own people, the occupation since 1948 is the problem. And of course, there are many statements also about the end of the occupation, meaning the end of Israel is the end game goal of the Palestinian Authority. This is a map from a Palestinian school book. And as you see, they've got the Palestinian flag over the entire Israel. And this is called the components of the state. This is the geographical area of the state of Palestine. By the way, this particular map was taken out of the Palestinian Authority school books last year because of international pressure, but it doesn't change the message to their people. We've seen hundreds, thousands of maps like that. Remember, I started with this school in Bethlehem. I pointed out this plaque honoring Ayat al-Akhwas, the 17-year-old suicide bomber. Well, look what I didn't point out then. It's right here. They also see every time they go into school, they see that the goal is Palestinian political jurisdiction over all of Israel. That's what this map symbolizes, the Palestinian flag over all of Israel. And this is literally August 8th today. This is something that was done at a Palestinian Authority summer camp. We're constantly getting these pictures in the summer camps this year. This is just the latest one. The message is an ongoing daily message. All of Israel belongs to Palestinians. This is the message that they are giving to the people. Now, there's a component that I haven't spoken to yet about in terms of the land, and that is the religious component. The map symbolizes some nationalistic message, and that video that you saw about Palestine being under occupation, that was a Palestinian nationalistic message. But there's also an Islamic message that the Palestinians give their people. And again, they are very religious people. And I'm going to read it to you from the Mufti's words. He says, Palestine, which includes Jerusalem, is Waqf. This is holy Islamic land. It's forbidden under Sharia law, Islamic law, to relinquish it, ease the transfer of the ownership, because it is Islamic public property. Granting ownership over Islamic territory, which would include meaning accepting Israel's existence and giving it to the enemies, is invalid and constitutes treason. Anyone who gives over land or accepts full permanent control over the land of Palestine, according to the Mufti, is committing treason, and it's invalid. It can't happen. In other words, Israel can never have land that is its own, according to Palestinian religious ideology. This is the moderate, PA, not Hamas, because the land is Islamic and no one can give it away. It stays Islamic forever. Hamas charter, by the way, has the identical message. The land of Palestine is Islamic Waqf. It cannot be given up. It should not be given up. So what we see here is when it comes to these religious messages about Israel's existence, Hamas and the Palestinian Authority are giving their people the identical message. Now, take a look at this entire message that I've given you. Israeli Jews are the source of evil of the world. They're connected with Satan. Even if there's fighting under the sea, the Jews are behind it. Palestinians personally are suffering from Jews because Israelis are killing Palestinians, particularly targeting Palestinian children. In addition, we're attacking their holy sites. And beyond all of this, Israel has no right to exist because they're on Islamic land. Therefore, you, good Palestinians, have a right to defend yourselves. And you have a right to fight Israelis. Fighting Israelis is seeking justice, and fighting Israelis is actually self-defense. That's the message coming from its people, from the leadership to the people. And I want to show you, they then get very specific about the right to kill Israelis. And here we have Mahmoud al-Abbas again. This is, again, Abbas's advisor on Islam. He's also the head of the Sharia courts. Now listen to what he tells Palestinians on TV. He quotes from the Quran where he quotes, kill them, and then he gives all the reasons why the Quran is telling you to kill certain people. And of course, when you look at the reasons he's giving, he's talking about Israelis. 10 different reasons you can kill Israelis. Listen.
اقتلوهم عائدة على المعتدين ولا تعتدوا إن الله لا يحب المعتدين واقتلوهم المعتدين اقتلوهم لأنه لو أجا واحد يعتدي علي يعتدي على بيتي يعتدي على أرضي يعتدي على وطني يعتدي على مالي يعتدي على عرضي يعتدي على أهلي أنا مأمور إني أقاتله مأمور إني أواجهه مأمور إني أقاومه ومسموح لي إذا لزم الأمر أن أقتله كما قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وكما قالت هذه.
Okay. Here we have the most important religious figure, Abbas's advisor. He tells them, he starts off with a quote from the Quran, kill them. He says, who are you supposed to kill? It says, people who attack you, your home, your land, your homeland, your honor, your existence, your rights. All of these things are things that he has said and Palestinians are saying daily that Israelis are doing. We're killing them. We're attacking them. That's what they're telling their people. And here comes the top religious figure. He says, kill them. And then he quotes us another verse from the Quran, kill them wherever you find them, literally giving a green light to kill any Israeli. This is coming from the top religious figure in the Palestinian Authority. The Mufti, the other top religious figure, the top position, said on Palestinian television that Sharia obligates every Muslim to wage jihad against the thieving Jews. This is what he said. The texts clearly say this. He said, if an inch of land is stolen, jihad is a personal religious commandment. So every individual Palestinian has a personal right to wage jihad to get Palestinian land back from what they called here on the program, the thieving Jews. This is the message from the Palestinian Authority to its people. Now, young people, teenagers, are probably not watching the Mufti and the advisor on religion. So how does the Palestinian Authority bring the children into this and the youth? And here is where they use music. I want to show you. Now, first of all, using music is very significant. For example, there was an article here by an expert on extremism talking about ISIS getting people to join through music. And she wrote in the Wall Street Journal, the catchy sing-along method for propagating ISIS ideology means it spreads quickly. It's far more effective than sermons or theological debates and treatises. Now, ISIS used it, and believe me, they've learned it from the Palestinian Authority. The Palestinian Authority has been using music for years to promote terror. I want to give you just a couple of examples of this. This is a video the Palestinian Authority TV ran numerous times in 2020. Okay, and then it goes on and on. Strap on the Molotov cocktails, but the key here, of course, is strap on the explosive belt detonated in Haifa and Atlit. Later on, the song sings, how sweet is the taste of martyrdom, I've found none like it. Then it mentions the name of 2 female suicide bombers. This is literally suicide bombing to music. That's what's being promoted here on Palestinian TV. Show you another fascinating example and a tragic example. This ran for 4 years on Palestinian television, on and off. It's a music video where the singer is literally begging for martyrdom in defense of Al-Aqsa. Again, I told you how important Al-Aqsa Mosque is. He's begging for martyrdom. Listen to these words. Okay, it goes on, 1 million grooms and brides at the celebration. Why are there 1 million brides and grooms? Because we're talking here about suicide bombing. We're talking about being a martyr. And the Palestinian Islamic belief is that anyone who dies for Allah, anyone who dies as a so-called martyr, including suicide bombers, they're going to be greeted by 72 dark-eyed maidens, the virgins of paradise. So therefore, death as a martyr is a wedding celebration with grooms and brides. And he ends with, they are going to paradise of immortals to the wedding procession. That's what is going on. This is, like I said, this ran 4 years of this suicide bombing promotion on official Palestinian TV. Give you another example here. This is a video that was broadcast 20 times in 1 week in April of this year. And the words go, I fired my shots, I threw my bomb, I detonated my explosive belt. Again, earlier this year in April, promoting of suicide bombing. And these are just a few examples amongst the hundreds and hundreds of examples of music being used to promote terror. Now, what's the end game? The end game, the Palestinians tell their people, it's the end of the Jews. And sometimes they include the United States in this, and that equals the end of the world's problems. This is a This is from the sermon that appeared on Palestinian television, and he sums up this entire ideology. Now, remember what I've been showing you. Killing Israelis, killing Jews is shown as self-defense. And this is exactly what he puts into one presentation here on official Palestinian TV. He says the Jews haven't changed throughout history. They're corrupting, scheming, plotting against all humanity, not just against Muslims, all humanity. Now, the Jews can't change. These malignant genes and cursed characteristics continue in them. They transfer them from generation to generation, from father to son. Humanity will never be able to live together with them. So here is the problem for the world. The humanity can never live with the Jews. We have these terrible genes. We do these terrible things, and we're not changeable because it's in our genes. And therefore, he says, the end of time, Muslims will fight the Jews and kill them, as it says in the Hadith. And then he actually, in case anyone doesn't realize for sure that he's talking about genocide here, extermination of Jews, he ends with a prayer, Allah, count them and kill them one by one. Do not leave even one. So important. Genocide, extermination of Jews here in this sermon, as well as in Palestinian ideology, is being presented as a service to humanity. If you're a good person, you're going to go out and kill those Jews because humanity can't live with them. And they have these terrible genes. That's the message coming from the Palestinian Authority. A few months ago, in May of this year, this religious figure on TV talked about the end of Jews and the end of America. He said that in Palestine, the greatest battles in history were resolved. And I want to show you part of his sermon. Look at what he says here.
الحروب الصليبية الدموية أيضا انتهتها وكل الطغاة والظلمة نهايتهم في فلسطين وهذه من بركتها وإن شاء الله نهاية اليهود وأمريكا التي
Okay, the Crusades and ISIS and others, they ended in Palestine. Allah willing, the end of Jews in America will be in Palestine. Now, again, this is outrageous. Just from an American perspective, you have a religious figure, by the way, he's director of the Ministry of Religion's preaching and training. So he is training all the other preachers who are going to be in mosques. And here he's putting in the United States in the category of people who have to be destroyed, just like Israel and the Jews. This is what's being passed on by official Palestinian Authority figures to all the people who are going to be giving sermons in the Palestinian Authority. This is in spite of all the aid coming from America. This is in spite of the attempts to start giving aid to the Palestinian Authority. It doesn't matter. America has been hated for years, and it doesn't matter really who is the president. America is hated by the Palestinian Authority, and these are the messages that come through. Finally, I want to give you some examples about children being taught to kill and to kill themselves. And I'll give you one example, and then we'll open up to some questions. You saw how important martyrdom promotion is in the Palestinian Authority. That one song running for years, the song at the beginning of this year, all this promotion of suicide bombing, martyrdom is made into an ideal. Now, this is something that Fatah saw from a radio program. This little girl was on a radio program. Fatah apparently heard it and then took the video and put it on their Facebook page. Look at the message that Fatah thought was important for people to hear, for young people on Facebook. Now, it starts with a story of a young boy who's not finishing his food. So his mother promises him a toy or a present if he finishes his food. Now listen to the continuation.
وعدته بهدية إن هو أنهى طعامه تساءل بجنون ألعبة تكون أقبلت أمه بقلة بهية تحمل الهدية نظر إليها فإذا بها بندقية صاح بأعلى صوته يا أمي يا أمي ما هذه أهذه هي الهدية ضمته إليها واحتضنته بيديها وقالت يا بني لم نخلق للسعادة فأنت في نظري مشروع للشهادة فالقدس لنا وسلاحنا إسلامنا وذخيرتنا أبناؤنا.
Okay. Islam is our weapon and our ammunition is our children. This is the message that Fatah thought was important. Now, could there be a worse child abuse verbal child abuse and to tell children that they have no value in and of themselves. Their only value is to be ammunition for Islam. That's the message that Fatah thought was important to give to children. And we have heard messages of martyrdom promotion hundreds of times to Palestinian children. This is probably the worst of all. Literally, you are nothing but ammunition. That's the message from the Palestinian Authority to its kids. So to get back with the question and just give a summary here, Palestinian Authority children and the world of the Palestinian child, as you see, is essentially the same as the world of the Palestinian adult. The same messages that they have, let's say, coming in sermons to adults, or coming from political leaders to adults, they package for children on children's programs. They put them in the school books. They put them in cartoons. They broadcast these cartoons. If the Jews are connected to Satan according to the religious belief of the Palestinians, well, children are going to get this in a cartoon. If they tell their adults that all of Israel is Palestine, children are getting this on their programming, and they're drawing pictures of the map of Palestine. If they're telling their adults that Israelis are murdering children, well, children are going to get it on a children's program. Israelis are trying to kill you. Accordingly, every Palestinian believes, or the overwhelming majority of Palestinians believe, that they are threatened on a regular basis by Israelis. They're in danger of Israelis. The only right thing to do is go out and kill the Israelis. And again, we heard the top religious figures say what? Kill them wherever you find them. What about children? They are getting the same messages: martyrdom, fighting, suicide bombing, through music, through song, through dance, through programs like this that were put on Fatah's Facebook page. So the world of the Palestinian child is probably one of the most abusive environments for children that you could possibly imagine. It's incredible child abuse. Children are taught to hate through lies. They're taught to kill through lies, and they're even taught that the best thing they could do with their lives is to be ammunition and to be a martyr. This is why we in Israel have terror, and this is why we will continue to have terror, it looks like, into the next generation, because this is tragically the way the Palestinian Authority is bringing up its people. The one final thing I'll say, and the one final note I'll just touch on, is that the good news is that when we make these presentations to governments around the world, to parliaments around the world, we get horrified responses, we get tremendous support. The Palestinian Authority has lost probably, I would say, according to their own statistics, probably 50% of their funding from foreign donor countries. And it's probably, most of it is because they understand what the Palestinian Authority is. 4 countries cut off their funding, literally directly as a result of the work that Palestinian Media Watch did, directly as a result of my meetings with foreign governments. So this is encouraging. The world still doesn't completely get it. And hopefully, the more we can get this message out, the world will eventually understand what exactly the Palestinian Authority is. They're not good for Israelis, and they're not good for their own people either. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the presentation, for the information. I really wish I could ask anyone who just saw this to tell me how they feel. As an ex-Muslim who grew up in Islamic Republic of Iran, there were times, there were moments where I looked away. I'm not gonna lie. Wow, okay, I'm sorry. I wasn't ready for this much flashback, I guess. I'm so happy there are people like you who are doing what you're doing, but then it kind of, it bothers me or puzzles me that there are millions of people who out there who could have access to your material, but they don't, and many of them by choice, because it's hard. It's hard to look at what you're presenting and feel like you're part of human society that is so disturbingly corrupt that for a made-up Allah and a made-up prophet and bunch of misery of life called, to me, a cult of Islam, they're willing to do what you just, and we both know this much of what goes on. I'm sorry, I don't mean to ramble on here and take your time with our audience, but I just felt like, I thank you. I'm so grateful that you do what you do, but I really hope and pray that every single person comes and checks out your evidence and get involved with what they need to do, which actually, since I said that, would you please just tell our audience where do they go to check out your evidence and presentations?
So our website address is palwatch.org. And in fact, if anyone wants a copy of this PowerPoint presentation with all the videos, I'll be happy to send it to you and you can make use of it. Students can use it, anyone can use it. Just write to Donna@palwatch.org and we will send you a copy of this presentation.
Fantastic. Okay, let's get us started on questions as they are coming in, and I want to make sure we get to as many of them as we can do. The first question I have here is, does Palestinian Watch get Facebook and or Twitter to remove incitements? Have you had success removing any of these messages?
Okay, so we've done a number of special reports on Palestinian Authority on Fatah Facebook, incredibly long reports, 50, 60 pages each time, documenting intense terror promotion. Again, as you just heard, this is literally just a tiny fraction of the amount of hatred that's out there. And Facebook is really the main means that the Palestinian Authority uses, especially during conflict time. And there's been somewhat of a response from Facebook. They've actually closed down and froze the official Facebook page of the Palestinian of Fatah a number of times for a number of days, but ultimately Facebook has chosen to allow them to continue. I had a long conversation with the person in Facebook who was in charge of stopping online hate, and I said to him, you know, if there would be one example on a white supremacist website of glorifying the murder of an African American, you would close down that Facebook page in a moment. And here I've shown you dozens and dozens of examples of terrorists being honored as superheroes on Fatah's Facebook page. Why don't you close them down? And he didn't have any answer for me, because there is no answer. They have chosen, Facebook has chosen to be a platform for Fatah's terror glorification and terror promotion.
Okay, I'm going to read you this question because it was on my own mind to ask you too. It says, can you expand on the Palestinian and Muslims in general, a split personality complex as regards to admiration for Hitler and the Holocaust? Let me expand on that. A lot of Islamic leaders, for example, like the cartoon you show, where it's Netanyahu, and then they call on the writing it says Adolf Netanyahu. So it's the bad guy as Hitler, but then at the same time they celebrate in certain Islamic countries, for example, Iran, they celebrate the Holocaust. So can you expand on that, the split personality?
Okay, there are so many inconsistencies in Palestinian Authority ideology. For example, there's tremendous amount of Holocaust denial. On the one hand, they'll say the Holocaust didn't happen, and then 2 days later they'll say that the Jews are Israel's doing to us what the Nazis did to them in the Holocaust. So there's a tremendous inconsistency in this. Within the Palestinian Authority, you just have to remember, one of the most admired figures, early figures in the Palestinian Authority is Haj Amin al-Husseini. He was the mufti of Palestine under Britain. He's a very important religious figure. And he, during World War II, he went to Berlin and he was an ally of the Nazis. He sat there in Berlin and he organized Muslim forces to fight together with the Nazis. He's at the time, he was a wanted war criminal for the killings of thousands and thousands of civilians. The Palestinian Authority has named a school after Haj Amin al-Husseini. He is presented on Palestinian TV as a hero. So the Palestinian Authority has no problem glorifying even a Nazi ally. Another interesting item, I'll just tell you, a few weeks ago, there was a story of a terrorist who was in jail. And what did they focus on? The fact that his father's name was Eichmann. And they said, why was his father named Eichmann? They said, because Eichmann was born after the Nazis were destroyed, and his father wanted to show who named the son Eichmann. He wanted to show that Hitler is gone and was killing the Jews, so now I'm going to have a son Eichmann. They just said this openly in the Palestinian official media. That's why he got his name Eichmann. Nothing, no criticism of this. So you still, and in fact, we have had on a number of occasions people in the Palestinian Authority named Hitler as well as a personal first name. So Hitler is there, Eichmann is there. There is this admiration. So it's again, two sides of the same coin, almost at the same time. Israel's like the Nazis, and yet they have the admiration.
Well, to be honest, it doesn't surprise me because contradicting material exists within the Hadith, within the Quran. One day Christians are okay, one day they are allies of Jews, so you shall not take them as your allies. So to the person who asked this question, sorry, it comes with the territory of Islam contradiction. Next question is, have you presented this specific presentation to the US government and Congress?
Okay, so in June of this year, just when Congress was opening up, I was in Washington and I had meetings there with both Republicans and Democrats. If you're horrified by this presentation, I assure you everyone who saw it was horrified there as well. One of the Republican senators said at the end of the meeting, we have to get you back here after the summer recess. I want to have you in front of Armed Services members as well as Foreign Affairs Committee. He's a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. One of the Democrats I met said the same thing. He said, you have to come back. I want everyone to see this. I want to arrange a lecture to large number of members to all see this. So I regularly in most years will make it to Washington 3 times, maybe 4 times a year. During COVID, of course, I wasn't able to. When it opened up, I went. And I plan to go back in the fall, and hopefully we'll be able to have that larger audience of Democrats that was discussed and get in front of some of those committees. I've been in front of the Foreign Affairs Committee many times in the past. Obviously, Congress is changing all the time, and so is the administration changing. It's very critical to get back there right now, especially to Democrats, and make them realize that the Palestinian Authority that they want to fund is this Palestinian Authority. This is what they're funding. Essentially, anyone who funds the Palestinian Authority is ruining the lives of Israelis, and they're ruining the lives of Palestinians as well because of these messages.
Next question for you is, why have we started funding of UNWRA, who publishes the Palestinian educational materials?
It's of course, it's an outrage that UNRWA is being funded. And let me tell you, it's not just because UNRWA teaches hate material. The Palestinian Authority also teaches hate material. In fact, the Palestinian Authority teaches infinitely more hate material than UNRWA does. And they're the ones who shouldn't be funded because you're promoting this hatred. But UNRWA, the tragedy of UNRWA started when there were 700,000 people who were in refugee camps as a result of the war. Now, instead of doing what it has always done, and that is resettle these people in their local population, possibly bring back some, instead of solving the problem, they have created the problem. Today, there are 5.5 million people in UNRWA refugee camps. What that means is that UNRWA is the problem, has created the refugee problem. The result of Israel's war and independence was 700,000 refugees, and today there are 5.5 million under UNRWA. So basically, UNRWA is not doing anything for the benefit of the refugees. UNRWA is creating refugees. If UNRWA continues going, and by the way, since Obama, during the period of Obama, Obama was giving a lot of money. I think comes out to about $2.5 billion were given by the Obama administration to UNRWA. And during that period, the number of refugees went up another 700,000 people. That's as many as there were in the original refugees. So it's outrageous. Why are you giving them billions of dollars and they're just making refugees? They're using UNRWA is not solving the problem. UNRWA makes refugees. And if we don't do something now about stopping UNRWA, in a few years, you're going to have not 5 million, you'll have 10 million refugees. They're going to have as many people getting fed and taken care of by UNRWA as you have in many states, in many small states. So it's an outrage. Aside from the terrible hate messages, UNRWA has its whole reason d'etre is a mistake, and it has to be closed down.
Let me ask you this. why is it that, let's say, for example, Islamic Republic of Iran is the biggest financier of Palestinian terrorism? Everybody knows that. They're not even hiding it. Why is it that Iran's regime won't take some of the Palestinian refugees and take them into Iran and give them a better life?
The Palestinian leadership, Iran, none of them are interested in giving the individual Palestinians a better life. If they wanted the Palestinians to have a better life, they wouldn't be telling the children that they're ammunition. Literally, they see, the Palestinian Authority sees its people as ammunition for their political agenda. I wrote an article which was published in the Jerusalem Post last year. I gave the title to the article, "The Invisible Palestinian." And what I showed was the Palestinian leadership literally does not see their people. They abuse them, they use them, they don't care at all about them. So your question is, why is no country enabling them to be settled in? They just don't care about them. Look, more than half the people who live in the Gaza Strip, this is under the Palestinian Authority completely now. Since 2005, more than half of them are officially refugees. Now that's outrageous. This is a Palestinian Authority area. The Palestinian Authority considers themselves a state. They're getting recognized as a state. So why don't they settle their people in their own areas? No, because they want them to be political pawns. So this is the great tragedy for the Palestinian people, is that their leadership don't care about them at all. They use them, and especially the ones in the refugee camps, they use them as literally political pawns for their own political agendas.
It is so inhuman. Here's the next question for you. Why doesn't the Israel government publicize what the Palestinians are doing and also saying to the other Arab nations?
So we work very closely, not just with foreign governments. Of course, we work closely with the Israeli government as well. And certainly our material goes straight to Israeli prime ministers. I know that when Netanyahu was meeting with President Trump, he actually showed them a whole series of our videos. And then Trump made that statement when he met with Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian Authority leader later. He says, "Why were you lying to me when you say you teach your children about peace?" And he literally had taken some of these videos that we had supplied them. So the leadership around the world does use it. The Israelis do use it. They just have to do it more in order to convince the international community of what the Palestinians really are.
Fantastic. Okay, we do have time for one more question to be squeezed in there. So how do we encourage Jewish and Christian organizations to heavily publicize all of this? How many people in the world really know and understand what the Palestinian Authority is doing?
Well, that is our great question all the time. How can we encourage organizations? We openly give our material to everyone who wants it. We partner with many Jewish and Christian organizations around the world. Many of my first introductions to different parliaments in Europe were through Christian organizations that we partner with. So there are many organizations that do use our material. I'm convinced, and I think you probably agree, that if they would use it more, it would be much easier. Our material is great ammunition for these organizations because it's authentic, it's honest, it's Palestinians in their own language. Nobody can say it's Israeli propaganda. No one can say it's Israeli made up. This is what the Palestinians are telling their own people. And we wish that basically we wish every Christian, Jewish, every pro-Israel organization come to our website, be in touch with us. We'll supply anyone with this full presentation or any materials that they want. So if you know of organizations that want to fight for Israel, please have them contact us. Remember, that's donna@palwatch.org, and we will get them anything that they need to help use this material to fight for Israel around the world.
100% agreed. And also we need to come to realize the weaponized terms that is being used against all of us should not hurt our feelings. It's okay to be an Islamophobe. It's okay to be a Zionist. It's okay. Freeing, and again, I'm going to put it this way for anyone who might actually think I'm an anti-Muslim. No. Remember, if anybody stands up to why the Palestinian authorities and Iranian regime and other behind them, when you stand up to them, you are setting those children free. You are saving those kids who are going to be killed or blown up. or turn into a child bride because they can. So this isn't so much all about America and Israel, but also about the number one victims of Palestinian authorities, which is the children. On that note, Mr. Marcus, it was absolutely an honor and a privilege to have you on. We are very grateful for your information. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Absolutely. And to our lovely audience who stayed with us until now, we appreciate you very much. And remember, all these webinars are brought to you by the David Horowitz Freedom Center and the Glazov Gang for free. So if you'd like to support these webinars, all you got to do is go to frontpagemac.com and consider making 100% tax deductible. With that being said, stay safe and goodbye.